Rick, would you like to I can introduce you. We've got with us, we're very happy to have Rick Longinati with us, and he's very knowledgeable about water supply in the Parisma and the Red Sands aquifers, and he was instrumental in getting the desal plant. How would you like to say that?
We embraced alternatives to desalination in the city of Santa Cruz. Yeah.
Yes. So I thank you for being here. And without further ado, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So you're recording it, or whoever's recording it?
I'm recording.
Great. Well, I thought, the thrust of what I want to say is that the district does have a serious issue with aquifer overdraft that it needs to address, but that the current way that it's attempting to address that is not the only way, and it's probably not the best environmentally sound way or financially sound way too. And that's the point of what I want to bring up. But I want to go back to the history a bit of the Soquel Creek Water District and how they've dealt with the overdraft. The first assessment that the district did was of how much a sustainable yield from the aquifer would be. That means the amount of water that could be pumped out every year and get recharged by natural rainfall and infiltration. So that was done by the U.S. Geological Survey in 1967. And they they came up with a number. Here's how much you can pump every year, 7,700 acre feet. Well, the district updated that with a guy named Muir, who worked for the U.S. Geological Survey, and that update happened in 1979. And Muir, studying the aquifer, revised the estimate, said, you know, it's not 7,700 acre feet per year, it's 4,000 acre feet per year. So just over half of what they had thought they could sustainably pump out. So the district was shocked. The district board of directors was shocked. They immediately instituted a moratorium on water hookups, which, as you can imagine, is a very controversial step to take because, you know, people that own property who want to develop it, now they can't develop it, right? So it was controversial. The second thing that they did was they said, let's get another opinion. Let's get a second opinion. And they hired a company by the name of Ludorf and Scalmanini. And they charged them with the same task of coming up with a number for the sustainable yield of the aquifer. Let me see what Ludorf and, so Ludorf and Scalmanini came up with a number of 1,200 acre feet. So 3 times the amount that Muir with the U.S. Geological Survey said. So this was, you know, unbelievable, like how you could have such a different estimate. So the district said, the board of directors said, you know what, we're going with Ludorf and Scalmanini, and they're going to be our consultants from here on. And that's exactly what happened. So for the next 20 years, they lifted the moratorium on water hookups. So for the next 20 years, Ludorf and Scalmanini were telling the board of directors, it's all good, you know, you're all okay, we got plenty of water, you know, recharging in that aquifer. Well, that wasn't the case. You know, sooner or later, the district had to pay attention to salinity levels that were measured in test wells along the coast, and those salinity levels were rising. And several new board members were elected, and those board members are still in office today. Bruce Jaffe, Bruce, who's the other Bruce?
Daniels.
Bruce Daniels, yeah, Tom LaHue, I think was elected a couple years later. So they really pierced the bubble of denial that the previous board had been in. And they said, you know, this is not sustainable the way we're using water now. They were already using more than the Muir estimate for the sustainable yield. So they began a partnership with the city of Santa Cruz on a desalination plant. So here's what they thought. They had to use desalination to make up the difference between what the customers were using and would use in the future, and what the aquifer could actually sustain. The desal was the solution. Santa Cruz would use the desal plant in summer months or 6 months out of the year in dry years. And the district, which would be about a third of the time, a third of the years would be, Santa Cruz might use the desal plant. And the entire rest of the year, along with those years that are wet or normal years, the district would be using the desal plant as a supplement. So from from Santa Cruz's point of view, Santa Cruz arrived at the idea of building a desal plant after an engineering study, a series of studies, but the last one was done by Carollo Engineers. One of the runner-ups, you might say, to desalination as a strategy was water transfers in between districts. And this was an idea that Carollo Engineers investigated and found promising. So it made it to almost the final cut, along with desalination. And at the end, Carollo Engineers found a fatal flaw with the idea of water transfers. And this fatal flaw was, according to Carollo, that the water rights revisions that would allow the Soquel Creek Water District to receive water from Santa Cruz would take 20 years to get approval from the state. Where did Carollo Engineers get the idea that it would take 20 years to get that water rights approval? They got that idea from the water director at Santa Cruz, Bill Coker, who would say that often to the city council, we can't do water transfers, it'll take too long, 20 years. Now, there was a little grain of truth in that 20-year figure, and it came from this. The city of Santa Cruz in 1998 was told by the National Marine Fisheries Service, you folks are in violation of the Endangered Species Act. In your streams on the North Coast, the Laguna Creek, where you get a substantial portion of your water, you're drying up that stream all summer long. I mean, it's basically a trickle going out after the city's taken all its water, and the fish cannot reproduce in that creek. And Santa Cruz did not deal with it. They ignored that National Marine Fisheries Service. And, you know, as people probably don't understand, the federal agency, National Marine Fisheries Service, has limited resources in which to go after violators of the Endangered Species Act. And Santa Cruz, I think, this is my speculation, was counting on the idea that, you know, we're not going to deal with this until we absolutely have to, maybe legally. The problem with ignoring the National Marine Fisheries Service and ignoring the needs of fish for reproduction was that the water rights applications that the city of Santa Cruz had at the state were being held up. This is the only power that the fisheries agencies had, was to hold up water rights applications. And there were several kind of water rights things that Santa Cruz was trying to do to clean up its water rights issues and to allow them to do certain things with more flexibility. That was taking forever because the fisheries agency said, you cannot move forward on these water rights. So that's where Bill Coker was able to say, oh, it'll take 20 years to get water rights to send water to Soquel because look, it's taken so long already for us to get these relatively minor water rights changes. So it was a piece of dishonesty. And I don't use that word very often or lightly, but it was what convinced the Santa Cruz City Council that the only solution was desalination. And crucially, it convinced the board members of Soquel Creek Water District that they were not going to get any water from water transfers from Santa Cruz. So they were willing partners in the desalination effort. So I won't spend a lot of time saying how that the demise of desalination came about, other than that, so a group of us, including Scott, who I see on the call, and Cherie, we advocated that the city take another look at desalination on the basis of mainly that the city's water picture had changed, okay? The city of Santa Cruz was using about 4.2 or 4.4 billion gallons a year of water. And that was expected to go up. All their water projections were going to go up. And this year, in 2020, it was supposed to go up to something like 5.4 billion gallons a year. Well, where are we now? We're using 2.7 billion gallons a year. This is an incredible drop in water demand that nobody really expected, but it was happening right at the time that Desal Alternatives Group, our citizens group, was asking for another look at desalination. It had happened by 2010. Water demand had gone down to 3.1 billion gallons, which was a dramatic drop. And so we said, look, the delta, the difference between, you know, the city's peak water use and what it is right now is equivalent to 3 desal plants running full, you know, full time. And so it's an incredible drop. And so that we wanted the city to take another look at it. Basically, we got the cold shoulder, so we went to the ballot, and we got 73% of the voters to say they wanted to vote on whether we should go forward with the desal plant. And that's what caused the city to pull back. They started a water supply advisory committee, and the rest is history. We actually embraced alternatives to desalination. So back to Soquel Creek Water District. So what that did was sort of further sow mistrust among the board members of the Soquel Creek Water District, because when Santa Cruz pulled out of the desalination issue, the board members read about it in the paper, so to speak. It wasn't a very easy way in which that Santa Cruz engaged with them to let them know, look, we got to pull out of this. So there's not a lot of, I think there's still a lingering mistrust on the part of the district towards Santa Cruz and Santa Cruz's willingness to share water. So that's what we're up against right now with the idea of water transfers, is these human relationship issues, mistrust. But the thing about the water transfer idea, even though Carollo engineers found the fatal flaw and that was the closed book on the subject, right? Well, not so. John Ricker at the county, who's the county water resources director, kept that water transfers issue alive, and he actually got state grant money to study it. And they came up with, you know, several scenarios for how it could take place and how much water would be available and so on. And so that's when the city actually, you know, took a step back from desalination and set up this water supply advisory committee. We drew on the work of John Ricker. And so our water supply advisory committee embraced the idea of water transfers. That was our #1 strategy to deal with Santa Cruz's own problems, because sharing water with the district during most years, 2 out of 3 years, are either normal or wet years in our history. That's changing, climate's changing things, but still a lot of years. And even in dry years, there's water available at times in the river. So that was our primary strategy that was embraced by the Water Supply Advisory Committee, which was these 14 stakeholders and different, you know, environmental business groups and so on. And the city council unanimously approved that. So when Soquel Creek District said, after the demise of desalination, said, well, we're going to go with treating wastewater, and that will be our solution. They did an environmental impact report, and the idea of water transfers was not considered to be of sufficient merit to analyze as an alternative in that environmental impact report. And I thought that was a big mistake. You know, you have one city, Santa Cruz, who's saying, this is our primary strategy for supplemental water supply. And the other district saying, no, it's not worth looking at. So instead they thought, you know, well, we've got $50 million being promised to us from the state. That looks very enticing. Let's go for the wastewater treatment. So there are two messages that I want to just leave. And one is, I don't know what the numbers are for consumption in the Soquel Creek district, but they basically paralleled Santa Cruz over the years. And as I mentioned, Santa Cruz has experienced an enormous drop in water consumption since, you know, the biggest drop has been, you know, the 2014, 2015 droughts were record droughts. And there was supposed to be a rebound from that. People were supposed to start using water again. Well, we haven't. There was a very slight rebound. I suspect that the same is true in the Soquel Creek Water District. And I don't think the district has really taken that into account in terms of a strategy. You know, all right, people are using less, and we don't know how far that can go before demand hardens, right? Nobody knows where demand hardening will really take place. So I think Santa Cruz missed out in looking at water conservation, and I think the district could potentially be doing more as far as that goes. And then you have the potential of receiving water from Santa Cruz, which has actually taken place. It has been in the last 2 years with a pilot program. It can be expanded. The Santa Cruz Water Department, the city is now applying to the state of California to expand its water rights to allow Soquel Creek District to receive water from the San Lorenzo River, which would be when that is approved, which should be within a couple of years, because it's short. It's not 20 years anymore. It's short because Santa Cruz has now dealt with the fish. They have agreed to basically everything the fisheries agencies have asked for. The new water director is on board with, and for that reason, water rights applications are now expected to take 2 years, according to the districts, or I think the attorneys well, the attorney that works for the county, Best and Krieger, estimated it's a 2-year process. So those water transfers are still very much a strategy that could help the district. They're actually less energy intensive than the district current water. The district pumps water out of the ground, which is a very energy intensive process because water is very heavy. And getting water from Santa Cruz, that's a lot of surface water that flows through the city by gravity, will be less energy intensive. And it has not been the district's, current board members' action really to optimize that strategy. I've not seen the action that the district could be taking. So I'll leave it right there.
Rick, I did have a question for you. So did you want to address the issue of the processing plant up there in Santa Cruz being improved, and so their ability to process water and provide more water is also improved?
Yeah, thank you. So Santa Cruz has the Graham Hill treatment plant, which was built in the 60s and is slated for a major overhaul. And as part of the overhaul, the plant will be able to treat turbid water. In other words, water that's muddy in the wintertime. It's never been able to do that. In the wintertime, you have months in the wintertime where the city is not getting any water from the river for half the days of the winter in rainy seasons because the water's too muddy. they get water from Loch Lomond. They take it from the reservoir instead. So now, with this upgrades to the Graham Hill treatment plant, the city can treat turbid water, and that's good news for everybody concerned, including the Soquel Creek District, because what it means is that that the surplus of water that's in the river can be sent south to the Soquel Creek Water District.
I'd like to open it up. Are there any other questions for either Corey or myself or Rick?
I have a question. The water transfers are due to expire in December. Does anybody know what the district's incentive is to try to continue with the transfers?
When I've talked to district board members, that they say that they're interested in continuing. They understand all these arguments that I've made, and they're not going to turn down water that's available at a reasonable price. One of the areas of mistrust has been the issue of price, and I got to say that Santa Cruz contributed to that mistrust when the water transfers were first in about 2015, when the agreement for water transfers was made. Santa Cruz was starting to say, like, well, you're going to have to pay retail rates for this water, and that was a non-starter for the district, and I think that was a big mistake on Santa Cruz's part. But the district is getting the water at a very reasonable rate right now. Santa Cruz is got major infrastructure issues that it is finally tackling. Under the previous administration, Bill Coker, there wasn't a lot of maintenance and capital improvement, and this water director, Rosemary Menard, is taking on pipeline replacements and freshwater treatment plant upgrade, and also the unexpected $100 million dam renovation, because the dam is not functioning properly in the event of a catastrophic event or something. So it needs to be overhauled. So all these are costs, which means that the cost of production of Santa Cruz water is going to go up. And so it's still a question mark of what the district might pay for water transferred from Santa Cruz. But I think if you consider in the long run, the wastewater treatment is it's a high-tech process, a very energy intensive process. The reverse osmosis membranes need to be replaced on a regular basis. That's a big expense. Energy, you're basically trading energy for water, electricity for water. It's about half the energy intensity of desalination, which is maybe about 3 times the energy intensity of what the district's current water from pumping out of the ground. So these are operating costs that are going to be with the district for as long as that plant is functional. And I think looking at the long run, the Native Americans used to talk about looking 7 generations ahead. I think that, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, you want to get something that's sustainable for the long haul. And certainly water coming from Santa Cruz, I think would fill the bill.
So Rick, the incumbents have said point blank that wouldn't solve the problem, that there isn't enough water from the city of Santa Cruz to solve the problem. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, what they're basing that statement on is a number of assumptions, which we've already seen the history of advice that the district has gotten about how much the sustainable yield. So they've got to consider the sustainable yield. They've got to consider consumption. The numbers that I most recently took a look at they had not really taken into account, the drop in consumption. They've posited some numbers for recharge of the aquifer, with climate change, and climate change is, you know, it's upon us, but we don't know exactly how it'll affect the recharge, right? So one way to go is to do the least expensive thing, you know, the water transfers, and see if the aquifers are recharging. You know, my information, or I think even in the EIR for this Pure Water Soquel, they acknowledge that that there is some recharge going on in the aquifers, that actually the water levels have risen in some places. So that would be my recommendation. Don't rush into some very expensive and not very sustainable piece of high-tech equipment, but do these other things and see how far we can get.
I have a question, Rick. What's the life of this Pure Water Soquel? I mean, I know it's hard to look in the future, but is it gonna, a plant like this gonna be last for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years?
Does anybody else know the answer to that?
Afraid I don't.
No.
But you did mention the maintenance of the plant was high.
Yeah, you know, well, in general, you know, so there's a high operating cost, and I don't know, you know, that the life expectancy of the plant, but that's a really good question to ask. There's a group called Strong Towns, which has a pretty compelling argument that, you know, local communities who receive big grants from the federal government or big grants from somewhere else, and they, you know, help them to, you know, build a highway or something like that. But then they end up holding the bag when it comes to maintaining that highway or maintaining whatever infrastructure it is, you know. So the gift of that outside money starts to you know, look a little more iffy when you look at the long haul.
Well, they always say, oh, we're going to get a $50 million grant, but it's not like they're going to give it back to us, the ratepayers. Would you drink this water?
Okay, well, that's another whole question, is the water quality. And so it goes through, you know, it goes through levels of treatment, winding up with reverse osmosis, and then ozonation, or what is it? The
ultraviolet is the last.
Ultraviolet.
Yeah.
So I think that I would drink it if I knew it was running optimally, you know. But the question is, like, when you have a very highly complex set of technology, is it always going to run optimally, you know? And that's your question mark. I mean, we know it's almost a rule, you know, when we get very high tech, that there could be more complications than simple. I was an electrical contractor, you know, and when I installed a light switch, I never worried about that light switch. It would wear out at its final, you know, once it wore out, then it was gone. But I would never ever think that it would not operate in the meantime. But, you know, my computer is something highly different, you know. And so I think that there's that whole critique of high-tech dependency that I really think has merit. And so when you're looking at water quality, you want to be asking, you know, is this going to be always tip-top condition?
Rick, I got a question for you. Why do you think on the Pure Water project, why didn't they just use the recycled water to go to parks, landscape medians, to benefit Santa Cruz, Capitola, the county, Aptos, and everybody can benefit and share the cost?
Yeah, in particular, the Seascape Golf Course, I think, would be a candidate for recycled water. And there was one idea of, so the sewage from Santa Cruz, the Santa Cruz sewage treatment plant gathers sewage from remote areas as far as Aptos in one direction and Scotts Valley in the other. And so the idea at Seascape Golf Course would be to capture the sewage that is running past the golf course and put a little treatment plant right there. And of course, it's more expensive than what the golf course does right now, which is just pump out of the ground. Mm-hmm. But hey, we're all using that same aquifer. You know, we got to make some decisions. Like it's the classic, you know, tragedy of the commons. We all got our straws in the ground, and then, you know, we're doing our own thing. But what's happening to the commons? You know.
Yeah.
Now, you touched on the price a little bit. So my understanding is that the city of Santa Cruz can't charge more than it costs to produce the water. So compared to that cost, the water transfer cost versus the pure water project, what do you think would be more expensive?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, Santa Cruz, some of these costs for Santa Cruz are going to be, you know, they're kind of one-time costs. You know, the pipeline from the North Coast is being replaced, and the you know, the freshwater treatment plant, you know, that's going to last for many years before there's some other major upgrade that needs to take place. So I think, you know, pipelines last for a long time in terms of, you know, the capital equipment. And so I think Santa Cruz is experiencing a real boost right now in production costs, but over time that's going to look better and better because it's not going to continue forever at this pace of, we're making up for some mistakes in dealing with it in the past. So I haven't crunched numbers comparing Pure Water SoCal with the Santa Cruz, but my impression is that for citizens like us who, you know, there's no way we're going to be able to, you know, really dig in and get, I mean, you know, we can try, but we're not going to necessarily, you know definitively, well, this is going to cost this and this is going to cost this. I don't think anybody does. And I think we have to go with some other instincts as citizens, you know, like, well, what do we think is more sustainable over the long haul, you know? And so that's what we did with the Desal Alternatives Group, like around 2010, when we first started critiquing the desalination plant. We didn't have an alternative. You know, we just thought, wow, 12 times the energy intensity to get a gallon of water as our current water supply. That's kind of crazy. So we did a forum. We had Bill Coker from the water department and some other people. After that forum was over, a man came up to me in that auditorium and he said, have you ever heard of water transfers with SoCal District? And I said, no, I never heard of that. And he said, well, I'm retired. I was the superintendent of water production for the city of Santa Cruz. My name's Jim Bentley. And he said, that's something you really should look into. You know, so you go with your instincts about what is sustainable, what is cost effective, and then you just try to explore. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I think the district should really at this time be optimizing water transfers, be optimizing conservation, and then take a look in 2 years and 5 years. How are we doing? Are those water levels coming back up in the aquifer?
They're not going to do it. It's all politics. They've never recovered from the desal debacle. They have never, ever recovered from that. And then when the city was charging more for the water transfers, they haven't recovered from that. So they want to go it alone. And that's the problem that we're dealing with. I think it's politics, Rick.
Well, I agree that the momentum is certainly to build this plant. But you have ratepayers and they're scared of ratepayers, you know, and apparently costs are going up.
Well, you know, the other option, Sherry, yeah, I understand that they feel like they've been burned, but Corey and I are new and we have new ideas and we're willing to embrace water transfers and percolation ponds. And using the recycled water for irrigation, we're more than willing to do that. And I've built a career on collaborative relationships. So I fully believe in that. Corey, did you want to address some of that also?
Yeah, some of the goals that I've done in my career include collaboration with other districts, collaboration with other cities, and being honest with each other and developing working relationships where we actually co-pay for different components of infrastructure, that be it recycled water, that be it percolation ponds, and fixing infrastructure and finding ways to be economical within budget, utilizing other agencies, other cities, cooperative, capital improvement funds to do joint projects with a positive outcome that has the common good, which is the aquifer, water production costs are stable, and don't break the bank to the ratepayers. That's what our goal is.
Paul and Laurel, did you have any questions? You're muted.
No, we're sort of just ratepayers who've been in Soquel Creek Water District for 30 plus years, and I will say that it's one of the weirdest utilities I've ever dealt with for a number of reasons. And I was very against the desal plant. I'm glad to see that it's probably finally dead. I did have some questions about Ricky's numbers, and I was writing them down. It was 68. I think you said 7,800 acre feet was considered to be the draw, and then in 79 it was down to 4,000 acre feet.
Correct.
And then the LS group, was it 12,000 that they said, that they claimed acre feet that could be
utilized? 1,200 acre feet per year.
1,200. And, okay. 1,200 would be.
Oh, I'm sorry, 12,000. You're right.
Okay, okay. That's where I was getting the error. I remember that number one. And then what year was that? Do you have an estimate?
Yeah, I think they came up with that around 1981.
81, okay, that would be about right. Oh, well, that wouldn't be right either. Well, I'm sorry, in my memory, I'm going. We moved in here in 82, 83, but, from Santa Cruz. Okay. I'm just amazed that the water district is going for these projects, and we're in one of the areas that has tremendous amount of resources of groundwater in this area. The river, we live in a blessed area. The forests and the trees and the streams there's an abundance of water, and even though they're using the groundwater, the idea that we should be able to find water other places to pump back into the aquifer makes a lot of sense.
Rick, did you want to talk about that helicopter study that was done in 2018 about the aquifer, about the saltwater intrusions into the wells?
Yeah, I mean, I don't take any issue with the concern of the current board members of the district that the aquifer is in danger of saltwater intrusion. Right. We see in the Pajaro Valley a terrible saltwater intrusion that's gone over a mile inland. There are coastal wells that farmers can't use anymore. You certainly don't want that to happen in the district. And I would even build a desal plant to solve that problem if it were the only thing that could solve the problem. It's just that that wasn't the case, you know. And I think that this current Pure Water SoCal project is not the only thing that can address the problem.
How is Watsonville, for instance, dealing with it? The Central Water District, I understand they have water issues also, but from overdrawing. Are anybody else cutting back on the aquifer?
Well, I actually talked to Brian Lockwood from the Pajaro Valley District, and they are using recycled water for irrigation. Now, they have a lot of strawberry fields. They have a lot of agriculture down there. And so they're using that. And I talked to him briefly and I said, well, he said, you know, we were really looking for more. I said, well, would you be interested in collaborating with other groups, other areas, other districts? And he was very open to it. Of course, I can't promise anything because, first of all, I'm not in office, and secondly, we don't have the authority to do that, but they are open to that. And that's how they're dealing with their issues. They're using, instead of using groundwater for irrigation, they're using recycled water.
But there's another Trout Gulch Water Company, which is, I talked with one of their engineers just in a conversation while the bridge was being repaired near my house. And he was really proud of their water since it's some of the best water in the state and they have an abundance.
That might be a collaborative issue that we can explore too, right?
Yeah, I'm coming in a little late. I've seen your signs, and we're kind of just very curious about what's going on. But Corey's just gave the statement that we need to cooperate with other groups to kind of see where we are, because SoCal Creek is not the only ones that are.
No, and we've met other general managers and other board members from the other districts, and they're all have opened and embraced arms for collaboration and joint projects. And both Maria and I have talked to them directly.
Yeah, I'm not doubting the salinity issue. That's what killed LA Basin. It's going to kill several other basins along the coast too. But it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Or the potential is real, and it's time to address it while we still can.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
So mainly we're here just to, as sort of an informed consumer, right?
Great, great. Ask away. Happy to have you.
Listened to the other team last night on their website or on their Zoom cast.
Nick, do you think there's any chance of consolidation with other districts like Santa Cruz City? If everyone could put their egos aside?
Well, you know, it's an interesting thought experiment. If it were all one district, how would the water be allocated, you know? Well, you'd have water transfers as a matter of course, right?
Yep.
In the wintertime when the river is full, you know, that would be, you would turn off the wells. Why would you be pumping water out of the ground when the rain is pouring down and the water's coming down the river, you know? So there is an argument to make all one district. I don't know politically how that could happen.
Well, maybe with some new board members that Santa Cruz City would be willing to work with us. You never know.
Yeah. Well, the state will possibly come in and demand that everybody start teaming up. If they need to come in and oversee it, I'm sure they will.
Paul, I think that they really went overboard on that last night. I don't think it's as bad as they say. Rick, do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
They're given the sky is falling story, and I don't believe that that's true from everything I've heard.
So what I know of this is that the proposal has just gone in this year, and that the state has 2 years to take a look at it and respond. And then on top of that, we have yet another couple of years after that to do something about it. So it's not something that's going to happen like right now, but it is something we do have to deal with. Absolutely, 100%. But we do have a little time. And go ahead, Corey.
No, go ahead, Maria.
Well, and as Rick mentioned, you know, the water transfer can happen within 2 years, if not less. So we could be, yeah, you know, so that could be one of the excuse me, one of the solutions.
I mean, there is a report out there by the Santa Cruz Mid-County Groundwater Agency, you know, stating in the history and the facts that we all know about overdrafting and how it was years ago and it was occurring. But the current condition in the more recent years, that the overdrafting has gone down, conservation has gone up, the water levels have returned to a reasonable level, and we're not in an emergency state, but rather a state of awareness and knowing how to move forward and adjust our thinking and being cost effective in how we do that.
You know, and Paul, that helicopter study they were talking about, they've been talking about, the Aptos Times is coming out with 3 questions that they asked Corey, myself, and the incumbents. And I did look at the helicopter study. If you look on page 76 of it, it says that the consumption is about the same as it has been since 1980s, the 80s, 84, I believe they said. So it's not, I don't think it's as critical, but the study that was done with the helicopter was 2018, and we have had growth since then. As you know, you've been here 30 years, I have too, and you've seen some growth, more in the most recent years. So my thoughts was that we should have another study done, current one, to take a look and see where we are right now.
Yeah, most definitely, personally. And I don't think we're in the same place that we were in the 1980s as far as water use. I think everybody they talk about that everybody in the districts are cutting back, or the customers are cutting back.
Well, in the 80s, they didn't have the regulations that are in place today. Building codes, state codes, requiring mandatory landscape rationing for different ways of doing public landscaping, private landscaping, as well as the fixtures inside your houses. So there's been a reported reduction of about 30% because of conservation.
Yeah, so.
Paul, I think you're absolutely right. People are more conscious now, because in the 80s, remember how much rain there was? Oh my goodness, it was flooding, for heaven's sakes. And then it became a problem because then there was a drought. El Nino dried up and La Nina came in, and then we had a drought. And so, and people started looking at it, and the people of Santa Cruz and Soquel Creek Water District responded positively. And I do believe we've got, like Corey said, we've got a lot more conservation measures in place, but people are also like, oh, well, I'm going to buy a lower water consumption washing machine. So technology has improved. So we are using relatively less compared to the 80s. Absolutely. Any other questions? We're approaching 8 o'clock.
Not from here. I'll share that I've already made up my mind about who I'm going to vote for. But I think you guys.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Hopefully us.
Yes. Oh, yes.
If you have questions, go onto our website and you can reach Corey or myself via email. And we are having another meeting next week, and we're going to have another expert. It's on the events page. So, Corey, I've had a very long day. Do you remember who's speaking next week?
No, I don't. I apologize for that.
Chris, do you remember?
I don't remember his name. I've never met him.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
I said, I don't remember his name, but he is a doctor and he's going to talk about the health. Oh, Carl Merritt. He's going to talk about the health consequences of it all. Because that's mainly where my concern is. I go to that quality water store to fill up my bottles for my work, for my coffee and all. That place is hopping with people that are not drinking the water. They're drinking bottled water. And there's a reason for that. I have not talked to many people that actually drink the water as is right now, because it's got a funny taste. It's full of your shower heads are getting calcified. I mean, it's kind of, and I'm concerned about pharmaceuticals and chemotherapy and all kinds of stuff in the water. That freaks me out.
Yeah.
So he's going to talk about the health part of it.
So Sherry and Paul and Laurel, please join us next week. And Ricky, thank you so
Ricky,
very much for
Thank
all of your
you.
time.
Next week is it same time?
Yes,
Yes.
at 7 o'clock.
Okay,
Yeah.
on Thursday.
And you're
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ricky. I really enjoyed your part of the presentation.
thank
Very
you so
knowledgeable.
much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here. Glad you're running.
All right, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye,
Okay.
Sherry.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.